Okay, we'll call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Commissioners for May 23rd, 2017. If you would, all please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And please remain standing for a brief moment of silence. Thank you. Okay, in terms of the agenda, there's one additional piece of new business, item I2, a brief discussion on giving direction to the Organizational Advisory Board on filling the open seats in some of the committees after they're done with their presentation. But other than that, with that addition, I'll entertain a motion. Does anybody else first have any changes to the agenda? If not, with that amendment, I will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Public comments. Shell Holston to talk about events.
Hello, everybody. Most of you know me, but I don't think you do. Or maybe you do. My reputation may have preceded me. Anyway, what I have to comment today
Shell, could
is-
you pull the microphone down so he can pick up on it? Thank you. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thought I talked loud enough anyway. What I'm talking about today is about the agenda over the weekend, the thing that we had uptown, the traffic that we had. I'm going to read this because I put it down exactly the way I feel. For months and months, it appears Waxhaw Town Hall has been and is exceedingly overstaffed. Case in point was the reallocation of food vendors throughout the festival this past Saturday and Sunday, May 20th and 21st. On Thursday, prior to the festival, I called Town Hall and asked to speak with somebody in charge of the vendor placement and tents. I was told that it was Lisa Hoffman, whereby the call was transferred to her voicemail. Big surprise, we're uptown in downtown, small town Waxhaw. When she called me back at her convenience, I requested no tents in front of my house, in front of my door, not in front of my house, in front of my door. She asked if I wanted no tents in front of my house, and I reiterated, not in direct line to the front door. I was having a book signing for a local author, Carolyn Dye Griffin. Therefore, she would be meeting people in my front parlor. On Saturday morning, I looked out the front door and saw a tent vendor who was positioned almost directly in front of the door. On the street, I spoke to an assistant of Miss Hoffman's, and she asked me if I wanted to move, ask the vendor to move. Of course not. The vendor was already set up. Why would we ask her? And it wasn't her fault anyway that she was there. As a result, the sign for the book signing was placed between two tents to show where they should enter the house. I am now sincerely thinking about not having any vendors in front of my house all next year, at all in front of the house, and no parking on the side. That is my property too, and people do park there whenever they want to. To add insult to injury, a food vendor was placed directly in front of my door, across the street. Those people have been in the food court where they always and were before, should not have been changed for the sake of change. The customers of the food vendor had no place to sit and eat. Consequently, they gravitated to my front steps, front porch, availing themselves to the seats and shade. The bright side was they left no trash. That was a good thing. Placing food vendors throughout the festival was a big mistake. Another case was too much government with poor planning. My suggestion to consider would be to rid the town of all events with the exception of the spring and fall festival, the parade for the 4th of July, and Christmas parade. Save the taxpayer money, lessen traffic parking problems on Highway 16 and 75 and throughout town. Another thing, as a sidebar, I'm going to mention this. As a sidebar, I noticed while the hall was finally, after 8+ months, discontinued because of I hope it was because of the petitions, the calls, the newspaper article, the television article, the many, many people that expressed their desire and hated the hall. But what do? We get little banners that has A for activity, H for heritage, A for activity, W for well-being. Voila, the hall. Clever to keep Mayor's signature even after the people have spoken. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shel. Greg, would you make sure you follow up with the input on the events? Sure. Okay, thank you. There's no other public comments signed up, so we'll move to the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Stewart. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, next up, recognition. Corporal William C. West, Chief Ice.
Mayor, members of the board, Mr. Manager, most of you know we had a robbery back in February of the Verizon store, and we had assistance from the South Carolina Highway Patrol. I'd like to have Corporal West and his wife come forward. Captain Hout. Mayor, if you wouldn't mind reading the narrative.
Good evening. So on February 10th, 2017, at about 9 p.m., two armed suspects entered the Verizon store located at 1100 North Broome Street in Waxhaw and confronted the employee that was on duty at gunpoint. They took him to the back room, zip-tied him, put him on the floor, and then took all of the iPhones and iPads from the safe and left the store. During that robbery, they unknowingly took a tracking device that had been placed in the safe with the phones. The employee managed to get free just minutes after they left, called the police. Waxhaw PD officers and Union County deputies responded. Once the tracking device was activated, the vehicle was located traveling into South Carolina, headed towards Interstate 77. We contacted the South Carolina Highway Patrol as well as other agencies in the area in an attempt to locate the suspects. At some point, Trooper William C. West of the South Carolina Highway Patrol spotted a suspicious vehicle that was in the tracking area and attempted to stop it. The vehicle failed to stop for the trooper, and at some point, someone in the suspect car started shooting at him. He continued the pursuit of the vehicle until it took an off-ramp just inside Columbia, South Carolina. At that point, at grave risk to himself, Trooper West conducted a pit maneuver on the car and forced it to stop. At that time, four suspects exited the car and ran off to avoid capture, leaving behind the stolen property and guns. Trooper West, along with other officers that began to arrive, conducted an extensive search that led to an almost immediate capture of one of the suspects. Sometime later that night, two others were captured, and the fourth suspect was later caught in Charleston, South Carolina. Thanks to the heroic actions of Trooper West, four very dangerous individuals were arrested. During the investigation, evidence has led to them being involved in more than 40 armed robberies across 3 states, including a couple of banks. All of the property of the Verizon store was recovered, which was valued at more than $70,000. On behalf of the town of Waxhaw and the Board of Commissioners and the Chief of Police, we would like to commend Trooper William C. West for his heroic actions that night, which put him at great risk of bodily harm. Thank you very much. Okay. Next up, we have reports. Commissioner Warner, anything to share tonight?
I have nothing this evening.
Okay. Commissioner Stewart?
I'm good.
Commissioner Fitzgerald?
Yeah, this weekend is Memorial Day weekend, and Saturday out at the museum, we're going to have a dedication to a memorial for the Vietnam War vets and the stage that was built at the museum at 10 o'clock. Everybody's invited, and it's just to commemorate the vets of Vietnam vet era. And then, of course, Monday, we're going to have our own event downtown at the Wall. And I want to thank all the veterans out there for their service in protecting all of us.
Thank you. Commissioner Burrow?
Sure enough. I'd like to thank Captain Hawk, Chief Ice, and all the officers that participated in this last Citizens Police Academy. I'm not sure, my wife is not sure that it did me any good, but I think it did. I enjoyed it, learned a lot, and look forward to a better relationship with or a closer relationship with our police department. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Hunt?
So yes, to echo Commissioner Burrows, thanks for the police department, the chief, Captain Hawk, and all the officers that, again, I was a member of the class. I'd also highly recommend it to citizens out there. It's a great 10-week program. You learn a lot about what goes into making us number 2 or top 5 most safest cities in North Carolina, and it's a great program. Also, this past weekend, I was not able to attend Kaleidoscope. I had a family matter out of town, but I want to thank the staff, the citizens that volunteered, and by all accounts, another successful Kaleidoscope weekend. And finally, today we had a workshop on the budget. First receiving the budget for next year. We met for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and at which point, actually about an hour and a half, the meeting was recessed until June 7th, where we'll continue receiving information. Our public hearing for the budget will be June 13th, which we just voted on. So we encourage you to come out, and there will be copies available beforehand at Town Hall that you can come and get, or will it be online too? Online. So go take a look at it, and certainly come to the June 13th meeting with your concerns and questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Couple items. Schools. Cuthbertson Middle School principal, Mr. Murray, reached out to me to see if we were interested in helping them develop some practical town problems to give them practical curriculum in the 6th through 8th grade. With the help of Wendy Davenport and staff, we were able to come up with some problem scenarios. There's 5 in total that we took back to them, and their staff is going to work on developing practical problems that touch all of the disciplines they teach, but bringing to life what they see every day in a town. Things like, if you're going to incorporate a town, what does it mean that you must do? What services must you provide? How do you develop a tax rate? What's your square miles and things like that, and take it all the way through to tax problem, allocation of money. They were taught, their personal passion was trying to figure out cubic tonnage of waste and leaves and things like that would, and how you impact the environment, et cetera. So thanks to the staff, but I'm anxious to see how that plays out, and which could lead to some presentations from them at school, et cetera. And if it works, we want to replicate that to Parkwood and other schools across the county. In that same vein, I had a conversation with Dr. Houlihan, school superintendent. There's an approach used in a number of municipalities called youth councils, probably 15 to 20 across the state. It's supported by the state legislature. And the idea is to take 15 to 20 high school kids are charged with representing all the youth of Waxhaw. In the last survey, it came back very loud and clear that our youth probably could be better represented. They meet monthly during the school year, August to May, just like a town board does. They learn the principles of school government, but they go out and interact with the various boards and committees, like specifically Park and Rec, to try to make sure that the youth are fairly represented in the town. Dr. Houlihan gave his okay to explore it. I would like to see if there's consensus here for me to continue that discussion with the principals to see if maybe we could pull that together and get that ball rolling. And it would be Cuthbertson Middle, Parkwood Middle, Cuthbertson High School, Parkwood High School. So we'd have all the schools that touch Waxhaw represented on it. You okay to continue to pursue?
That's right.
Okay, thank you. And it would give all of us a chance to develop some mentoring relationships with some of the kids. Received a letter addressed to me regarding the post office, if you recall. They were here April 11th, and if you would pass that down to the clerk, just to acknowledge that we've been in receipt of that. They are proceeding with finalizing a location. Their plan is to locate as close to the current one as possible. They will meet all of the operational needs that they have, and if you recall at that meeting, they need the ability to bring in 2 semis and turn around and all that kind of stuff because of the mail increase, serving all of 28173. They have not shared, nor will they share, the real estate that they are considering. That is, and they made it very clear in the letter that that is their decision, not ours, but they plan to locate it as close to the current one as possible. We get asked a lot about transportation. In the next 2 months, we have an interesting ability to influence some significant investment in the town of Waxhaw over the next several years when it comes to transportation. The Regional Transportation Organization, which we are a part of, in which we now are a voting member, and really making ourselves heard and represented there. The draft plan for the next 10 years is being put in front of all of the region for public comments. And you're going to hear from me again, and we will probably do some form of blitz communication. We will need everybody to go out there and support the Highway 16 funding. They are willing to put up over the next 7 to 10 years upwards of $40 to $50 million to improve Highway 16 from Ray Road down to Waxhaw Parkway. It's a great opportunity for us to make our voice heard, to reinforce the importance of improving Highway 16. That comment period will start in the middle of June and run to the middle of July, and depending upon those comments, we will then, the Regional Transportation Board will vote to decide whether or not to approve or not. In that same vein, we, through the hard work of Dennis Rory and his team, working with DOT, we applied for some additional funding opportunities, and specifically to address a critical intersection, Gray Byram and 16. We have been told, and the draft plan comes before the Regional Transportation Board in June, that we have been, we are on the approved list, the last project to make it in, for $3.1 million in total funding to fix that intersection. That will give us some additional flexibility. The money isn't immediate, but that will give us some flexibility to attack what is one of the critical intersections in this town that gets a lot of complaints. So that's the good news in terms of working our partnerships over the last year or so, to 2 years actually, to really drive some Waxhaw's presence and getting the county to support us, as well as the surrounding municipalities. In that same vein, there is some funding in for those of you that travel to Charlotte for work that begin to address the roundabouts. Go anywhere up and down Newtown, whether you come at it, wherever you come at it with on Waxhaw Marvin and Marvin Road. There's significant bottlenecks and safety issues there, and so that funding is also on the table as well. So the state is starting to look at our region and trying to help us solve some of the problems, and I think that's really good news. And lastly, in June, second to last, in June, we will begin a very aggressive approach on getting the information out there in more ways and clear up some of the misinformation that is being shared out there about some of the things in the town. We got the feedback last time from the survey that basically said 63% of the information that's shared in this town or gotten in this town is by word of mouth. Obviously, we're not getting the information out there, and it's leading to misinformation. And it's time to get the focus and the discussion on how we're building a better community, which I believe we are. There are no personal agendas here. It's about building a better community. And doesn't mean that people don't make mistakes. We make mistakes. I make mistakes. But along the way, this is all about building a better community. And when our communications team gets back from their vacation, we're going to tackle that on. And actually, number one thing that people don't have a clue on is what's our growth management plan. Yet that's probably the one thing that we've invested more money in over the last 2.5 years or 2 years than anything. So that's shame on us for not being able to communicate it. It touches every part of town, from sidewalks to roads to the environment, et cetera. So we got to do a better job on that, and that's going to be the focus in June. Lastly, well, and on that same vein, I would do an update, but out of respect, because Ms. Kiddo is on vacation, I reached out to her. I got information from the question that she raised about how do we assign people to different boards, and she had a concern that we were using outside residents, and the reality is the people that were assigned to Main Street are business owners in downtown Waxhaw, and that's how they were selected. But I'm going to go through the whole process with her, and we made email contact before she left, and we're going to talk when she gets back. Lastly, but not least, finally, I want to, on behalf of the board, thank Mr. Leonard Barefoot for everything you've done over the last month and a half. You helped us through a transition period at probably what is one of the most difficult times for a town, where we have to fulfill our statutory requirement of building a budget, and we have one manager going out, one manager coming in, trying to understand and assess what's going on, having a statutory requirement to have a balanced budget in place by the 1st of July and approved, along with just running the day-to-day operations of the town. So on behalf of all of us, thank you, sir, for all that you've done over the last month and a half. I'm sure it's the best month and a half you've had, but I'm sure you're ready to get on that boat and do some fishing. So thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Ferguson, town manager's report?
Yes,
Or were you worn out from this afternoon?
No, I'm good. 3 items tonight. First of all, the first item, earlier today, we sent out to you a press release that will go out late tonight or in the morning, announcing that we have hired a Parks and Recreation director. Her name is Dina Sabinski, and Dina is here with us tonight. So Dina, if you'd stand. Welcome. Dina will start with us on June the 19th or thereabouts. She comes to us from the town of Stallings, so we have poached some talent. Dina does live in Union County, close by here, and so we're happy to have her joining the staff, and she'll quickly learn that Parks and Recreation are one of your focus areas, one of the key areas that we want to work diligently on and make some things happen in the next 12 months. So welcome, Dina, to Waxhaw. Today we had some parks that were closed and some trails that were closed due to high water. We also had an advisory that went out on the Kensington Road area for high water also in Millbridge. Be aware that that might not have ended as the rain continues to fall over the next day or so. The ground is soaked, and if it continues to rain like it did today around lunchtime, we'll have additional episodes of high water. So the advisory today said, don't try to drive through the water, turn around and find another route. You really don't know how deep the water is, so always proceed with caution if you see water covering a road. Our staff went out and assessed several areas today during the rain event to try to determine ways that could be mitigated in the future. We did have some calls to the town hall or visits to town hall reporting some of those areas, and so staff went out during the event to try to determine exactly what was happening and see if there's ways to mitigate that in the future. But unfortunately, with the amount of rain that fell today in that short period of time, you can't really fix all those type storm events. That was item number 2. Item number 3 is that we are going to take a hard look at a way to perhaps create a Waxhaw 101 class that would be very similar to the police sessions that have been just wrapped up. I believe that was about a 10-week session. It's going to take some time to develop, and it will require our department heads really helping out in that respect. The first year we'll go slow, and we'll try to figure out what works best, but I think that gets back to that communications piece that you heard about in the recent survey of ways that we can interact with our residents and our businesses. If indeed, and it sounds like it was, that word of mouth is one of the prime ways that communication is shared, then the more residents who know more about the way our operations are and our plans exist, the more communication can be accurate. So that's something that's on my to-do list, is to work on the development of that type of a program. We will probably start small and try to work the bugs out of the first go-around. Generally, those type programs work a little bit better in the wintertime. So we'll look at the time frame for that. It might be that we begin it in February and run it for 7 to 8 weeks. But that's something that we'll work on trying to pull together that will have long-term value to the community. The other thing that does is that gives you a group of people who are somewhat more educated about the town than the average resident might be. And so those people also will become important as you make selections for boards and commissions. So you'll have a kind of a opportunity to ask them that question: have you participated in a Civic 101 or Waxhaw 101 type program? So that's something we will work on moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the manager? Okay, moving right along. Public hearing for local historic landmark designation of the Waxhaw Water Tower. The local historic landmark request is by the Waxhaw Development Services Department staff on behalf of the town of Waxhaw to designate the Waxhaw water tank as a local historic landmark. I will entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Mr. Oliver.
All right, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, this is a public hearing, and all state and UDO requirements have been met for this public hearing. And I guess I'll wait for the presentation. There we go. So, outcomes of the local historic landmark designation. Any changes to the exterior of the facade would require a certificate of appropriateness. There are both minor and major COAs, as they're known, certificate of appropriatenesses. A minor would be approved at staff level, and a major would be reviewed by the Waxhaw Historic Preservation Commission. Appeals of a staff determination on a COA would go to the WHPC, and appeals to the WHPC determination will go to the Board of Adjustment. This requirement does not in any way prohibit normal maintenance of the structure. Local landmarks can defer property tax, but in this case it's owned by the town and not subject to property taxes. And the WHPC can delay demolition of the local historic landmark for up to 365 days. The property is located at 113 McDonald Street, adjacent to the McDonald House and the gravel lot owned by the town, in case anybody wasn't aware of that. A little history on the water tank. In 1935, the town of Waxhaw began the process to secure funds through a Depression-era federal assistance program called the Works Progress Administration, or WPA, to implement a municipal water and sewer infrastructure. In 1938, the Waxhaw citizens voted for a $42,000 bond. In 1940, the Waxhaw citizens again voted for an additional $8,000 bond. And in 1940 to 41, the Board of Commissioners voted to increase the property tax from 85 cents on 100 to $1 on 100. And for perspective, our current tax rate is 36 cents on 100. The WPA funding was finally awarded in 1940, and construction started in March of 1941, and the structure was completed in June of 1941. The water rates were initially set at $1.50 per 2,000 gallons for citizens and $2 per 2,000 gallons for businesses. In 1954, the Waxhaw Volunteer Fire Department was established and began drawing water from the tank. The water tank remained Waxhaw's primary source of water through the 1980s. The Union County Public Works assumed ownership of the tank in 1987, and the tank remained in use until the new ground-mounted tanks on Sims Road were completed, which are pictured here. They're not nearly as pretty. Union County Public Works deeded the tank back to the town in 2011, and in 2013 the water tank was fully refurbished. The architecture of the tank, it's a tall riveted steel structure with horizontal struts and angle iron tie rods and lattice columns. It's got a conical roof. It's a 49,000 gallon steel tank, and it's 26 feet in diameter and 13.5 feet tall. I'm not sure what the total height of the entire structure is. In 2013, contractors refinished the structure in silver paint and black letters, Waxhaw, North Carolina. The Waxhaw, North Carolina sign is 3 feet tall and 31 feet long. And here you can see the conical roof and the lattice structure. In November of 2015, the Board of Commissioners voted to commission a landmark designation report. In June of 2016, the designation report was completed. In January of 2017, the WHPC forwarded the report to the State Historic Preservation Office. In March of 2017, the State Historic Preservation Office gave a favorable recommendation on landmark designation. In May 2017, the WHPC held a public hearing and voted to recommend landmark designation of the water tank. And in May of 2017, currently, we are holding a Board of Commissioners public hearing and possible adoption of the landmark designation ordinance for the structure. Staff supports the local historic landmark designation of the Waxhaw water tank. In March of 2017, the State Historic Preservation Office reviewed the designation report and recommended designation of the Waxhaw water tank as a local historic landmark. On Thursday, May 11th, 2017, the Historic Preservation Commission held a public hearing on the local historic landmark designation of the Waxhaw water tank, and the WHPC motioned to send a favorable recommendation to the Board of Commissioners on adoption of the ordinance designating a local historic landmark of the Waxhaw water tower. And I can take any questions at this time.
Max, I have a question.
Sure.
Oh, yeah, that's the one on that slide right there, or whichever. Twice it's named water tank, and twice it's named water tower.
Yeah, it's locally known as the water tank, but the designation report refers to it as the water tower.
Okay.
So I don't know if there's like an official name for it.
Okay. So
I believe the ordinance refers to it as the water tower.
I think if we're going to do it, we should probably do it right. Now, I don't know what right is, but
It's a tank on top of a tower.
that's a lot of right. It's going to be a big sign to put all that on it.
In most municipalities, it would be called the water tower, but in Waxhaw, it is called the water tank. And at state level, they would call it a water tower, so that's probably why it refers to a water tower.
I think it is a water tower, but it is the Waxhaw water tank.
Well, just to be clear, the ordinance says, or the ordinance says Waxhaw water tower. What do we want?
It's a water tower.
Water tower, okay. So consensus reached. Okay, other questions? We have nobody signed up to speak. Did anybody at the Historic Preservation Commission public hearing come from the public to speak?
Yes, Joyce Blythe was there.
Okay.
And as well as Ron Zimmerman. So those were and then Commissioner Fitzgerald was there as well. And I think everybody viewed this positively.
Yeah, Joyce Blythe talked about getting the local landmark designation, and she was proud to see that that was happening to preserve our heritage and preserving our heritage throughout the downtown area. And Ron Zimmerman was well behind it too. The only question is lighting it. They did not want to see it lit.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Commissioner Stewart?
Did not want it to be lit, you mean the colors and,
Well, they didn't want to see it lit. The water tower itself lit up consistently
Oh, okay.
every night. But we do it on occasionally. We light it and we put different colors on it. Lately, we lit it up blue for recognizing of our police force and the national police force. And I think other times we've lit it different colors at Christmas. We've lit it different colors and flashed it. And actually, on the new roof of the Duncan McDonald house, it reflects onto it, the metal roof, and it changes the color of the Duncan McDonald's house roof every time.
And we did look into the lighting, and staff believes that it's just temporary and it doesn't physically alter the structure, so it shouldn't be an issue.
Other comments, questions? Okay, if not, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Max.
Thanks.
Next up, some old business. We had public hearing on the Thoroughfare Protection Overlay Text Amendment Petition TA 005709-2017. And Lisa McCarter is back with us to give us any updates, since we've already had the original presentation, and entertain any additional questions. So, Lisa?
Okay, the only update that I had was there was questions raised about Union County at the public hearing. Union County is in support of the proposed text amendment, and if you had any other questions about that.
Thank you for tracking that one down. And the reason for that is we have a mixture of Union County and town property along 16, so that was an important one to get clarity on, so thank you. Do we have other questions for Lisa? If not, I would be happy to entertain a motion on the topic, as in your binder, if somebody, or in your online, if somebody wants to make a motion,
sure.
one way or the other.
I would like to make the motion to approve the text amendment for petition TA 005709-2017 as presented.
So we have a motion to approve the text amendment petition as presented. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, 5-0. Continuing with that, Commissioner Burrow, would you like to read the
Sure.
statement for reasonableness and consistency?
Also like to approve the statement of reasonableness and consistency. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the future planning goals of the town of Waxhaw. It is a reasonable request and in the public interest, as the text amendment is in keeping with the comprehensive plan, will provide uniform setbacks along the corridor, and is consistent with the new form-based UDO that is being developed.
So we have a motion to approve the statement of reasonableness and consistency. Any further discussion on that motion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, 5-0. Thank you, Lisa. New business. Mr. Don Fisher, the OAB chairman, is presenting a slate of candidates for 4 positions on various boards and committees. And the ask that he will make of us is to approve the entire proposed slate of board and commission members as recommended by his committee. Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We appreciate the opportunity to be here. Commissioners, Manager Ferguson, Attorney Spencer, Assistant Town Clerk Southard, we thank you especially for all the work that you've done for us at this appointment time, because right now, Mr. Ferguson, I want you to know that both Kelly and Melody have really stepped up to the plate. The group felt like that the last meeting we had was by far the best meeting we've ever had due to the work that they put forth for us. And I think they need to be commended on that, and it made our job 10 times easier. I'd like to thank the committee members, Brian Allen, Earl Cook, who's here tonight, Dave Kobziak, and Ann Simpson, for the diligent work that they put forth. And what I'm asking tonight is you have in front of you a sheet that is the recommendation for the open board and commission positions, starting with the Board of Adjustment down through the Planning Board. I got word tonight that you're going to possibly approve the some of the holds that's on there for the PCR, but I do want you to know that the Board of Adjustment that's on hold was due to one applicant that applied that maybe could have been considered, did not have the statutory residency requirements of the town of Waxhaw within the city limits. So that needs to be re-advertised and filled at the time that we get applications. We are happy to recommend Christopher Patrick to fill the permanent position on the Board of Adjustment. Mr. Thomas Hall, to former commissioner, to fill the term up 9/30/18 for the Historic Preservation Committee. And then what we did on the openings for the Planning Board, Sean Morris was previously approved by this board as an alternate, and with a resignation, we moved that alternate position that Sean had, we moved Sean rather from that position up to a permanent position, and we recommend Scott Shelton fill his place. Now you'll notice that in the body of your piece there, we had 34 active applications. These applications were reviewed and vetted, discussed, and I want to thank the town again for the residency help that they gave us where applicable, and this made our job 10 times easier. There were 8 vacancies there on 4 of our boards and commissions. 22 of the 34 applications relate to current vacancies, and there's more information down there that you see about the applications received, etc., and you can take a look at that and ask any questions that you might have. I also want to take time to thank Chairman Michael Downing of the Board of Adjustment for visiting with us and getting his input on his candidate. Also Michael Crimer working with us, getting input on the candidates for the Planning Board, and a former member that when we were asked to hold on the HPC, Historic Preservation, Terry Settle, who's here, she worked on that, helping us with Thomas Hall. So we fully support this slate of candidates and ask your approval of it, and at this time we'll answer any questions that you may have.
So just a point of clarity,
Yes, sir.
you're asking us to approve the appointment of Christopher Patrick, Thomas Hall, and Scott Shelton to the respective positions, and to
And allow Sean
to
Moore
move
up.
Sean Morris from alternate to full-time planning board member. Okay, so that's the ask of us. Any questions for Mr. Fisher?
So on this chart, it says the alternate is Scott. So is Scott moving up or Sean?
Sean's moving
Sean
up to the
moved
full-time,
up.
and Scott's moving into the alternate
Okay,
position.
I got you.
Any questions? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the appointments as presented.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion from Commissioner Warner. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank y'all. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Don't go too far, because we might give you some direction here, okay? So next item on the agenda, and the last item on the agenda, just a brief discussion, since your presentation, Don, brought out the fact that we had Parks, the PCR board on hold.
Correct.
Do we want to go ahead and fill those positions while we're moving forward, even though we're in a state of transition? And so I'll throw that discussion open to the board for now.
I just wanted to say that I talked to the board this past Wednesday and went over the presentation that I had given you 2 weeks ago, and they were all very receptive. They are excited about doing the inventory to start, and I think it's a good idea to go ahead now, especially since we have a Parks Director on board now. Get these 3 people in, get a full board, and I'm looking forward to all of this piece coming together and working together, especially since we have the survey back saying people here want parks.
The only question I have is, and Donna would help us, I think, and you can do this informally through an email. I'd like to know what other positions are opening up 9/30/17. I know we're getting into that season where you have to fill all the boards. But by the time we get the 9/30/17 appointed, we'd be within a 45-day window. That might be a little tight, but would like to understand, all the board, I think, would like to understand who else is up.
Put that together, working with the team at the town, and shoot emails out to all of you, okay?
But I certainly support getting these 2 positions. And my understanding is you've been working on this. It's just
We
that
have-
you held
we-
while we're trying to decide.
We
what
do
to
have quite a number of applications, and we've got a couple that we were going to present to you last time. We're going to start the process over again because new applications have been there or just been received over the last, say, 3 to 4 weeks in preparation for tonight, and we will get a slate that we feel will be really good. So we've got some good, top-notch applicants. We've got some that had park design in their resume, et cetera.
We understand.
Just another
Commissioner Burrow?
question. I think that Commissioner Stewart's right on target. Are any of the current members cycling off this time? And is that going to be considered as you bring back these 3? Is there going to be a 4th or a 5th?
When we get this will be the first one we start on, will be the PCR, getting this information from the town to find out where we're at, make sure everybody's on the same page, the term limits, et cetera, and then we will put it together, find out who may or may not reapply,
Right.
and take all that in consideration.
Thank you. Yeah, you don't want to put 3 on and still be missing 3.
Any other? So, clear what you got to do?
We've got our marching
Got
orders.
consensus? That's fine? Okay, very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we have no need to go into closed session and no other topics on the agenda, so at 7:18, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it.